And we begin to show it this morning. I want to particularly welcome our Mayor Bowser, our council chair. You will hear from them shortly. I want to welcome our council member, Anita Bond, at large. We're pleased to have her here. Our shadow delegation, Senators Michael Brown and Paul Strauss, and Representative Franklin Garcia. But I particularly want to thank our local D.C. Statehood Coalition. Through all of these are the people, you see them out here, who have done the hard work. When we were in the Republican Congress, and that has been for the last 12 years, they never stopped working for D.C. statehood. We have not done this by ourselves. We have not done this by sending dear colleagues out. Indeed, we are informed that the coalition is having a lobby day in February. This work continues, but it continues with a new and hopeful sign and Democratic Congress. To show you the kind of support we have, the Speaker of the House, yes, the new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, before this press conference, has issued her own statement in support of D.C. statehood. I won't read the whole thing to you. We have copies of it here, but I will read one line from it, which shows you the kind of support we have from the top on down. Says Speaker Pelosi, for too long, the residents of the District of Columbia have served our nation in uniform, paid taxes, and contributed to the economic power and success of our country while being denied the full enfranchisement that is their right. Is that not an endorsement for statehood for the District of Columbia? And that is the kind of support it's going to take for us to move this bill to the House floor. Yesterday, as the 116th Congress began, I introduced my first bill of the session, H.R. 51. I reserved that number 51 early on. The Washington, D.C. Admission Act. It has already, that's on the first day, 155 original co-sponsors. Let me tell you what an original co-sponsor is. Now, an original co-sponsor is somebody that says there is no difference between Eleanor Holmes Norton and us. We stand with her. She is not introducing this bill. 155 members of the House of Representatives today introduced the D.C. statehood bill. That's the kind of support we have. And that's on the first day of Congress. That's when they just got back here. So we're off and flying, and we're going to make the most of it. That is already higher than the number of Democrats who voted for the statehood bill when I first came to Congress and secured the first ever House floor vote in 1993. So we're already showing what we can do as you have built support for this bill. Now we have our two elected officials here, and I want to say a word of tribute to them because I particularly appreciate that for my many years in the minority, and I have been in the minority almost for my entire service in the Congress. Mayor Bowser and Council Chair Mendelson have dutifully come to stand with me as I have introduced this same statehood bill in consecutive Congresses, always controlled by Republicans. Our elected officials and our advocates have come not only out of duty, however, they have come out of earned resentment. Earned resentment at representing D.C. residents who pay the highest federal taxes per capita in the United States of America. Remember this figure, $12,000 per capita is what you pay in federal taxes, higher than the taxes paid by people in any state in the Union. Yes, earned resentment that they pay those taxes despite having no representation in the Senate whatsoever and no final vote on the House floor. Earned resentment at the endless attempts to overturn D.C.'s local laws. All of that is over today, my friends. Our problems have been in this House. I find it easier to work in the Senate, where we have no representation, to get some of this off of us. This has been the bad House. This has become the good House. This is the Democratic House. This is your House. As we begin this new year, 2019, and the 116th Congress, we foresee we will make big change. Change doesn't just float to us, my friends. What we have done in this Congress, you have made happen. Just as your coming in February for Lobby Day will increase the support we have. Democrats who believe that democracy includes those of us who live in the nation's capital have taken control of the House of Representatives, and we mean to show we're in control. For example, we are in H.R. 1. Now, let me tell you what H.R. 1 is. H.R. 1 is the overriding bill. I mean, there's a press conference going on right now where I should be. Every member's crowding in there to say we've introduced H.R. 1. H.R. 1 says these are the most important things we stand for. Usually they're not even issues. Usually they're things like ethics. They're things like fairness in the way we proceed. So I have been working with the Speaker to get the district in H.R. 1. Now, that's really unusual because H.R. 1 doesn't have usually bills in it. So what I was able to get were all of the findings as to why the District of Columbia should become the 51st State of the Union. That is in H.R. 1. That press conference is proceeding as we begin. Now, how will we proceed? This doesn't just happen. To take advantage of this opportunity, we're going to proceed on two tracks. The first one is obvious. First, in this Democratic-controlled House, we will seek a vote on H.R. 51 in the House of Representatives. We have already received a commitment from my good friend, Oversight and Government Reform Chairman Elijah Cummings, to hold a hearing and a markup on H.R. 51 in this very hearing room, right here, where we are meeting today. We will be standing there. I hope some of you will be here when we have that hearing on H.R. 51. This is the same hearing room where Republican chairs have recently attempted to overturn D.C. local laws, including the one set of laws they go after each and every Congress, and that is our D.C. gun laws. We will make the moral and the legal case for statehood in a hearing. We will ultimately pass the bill out of committee, and we will press for a full vote on the House floor. You heard the commitment we already have from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. At the same time, you have to think strategically in this Congress. So we've got to proceed on yet another track, because there is the Republican Senate, and besides, it takes 60 votes to get anything done in the Senate. So the second track will get D.C. closer to statehood by perfecting, and I'm sure many of you have lost track, the many outstanding sections of the Home Rule Act that could easily be passed by the House and Senate. They could be passed by simply filling out and completing D.C. Home Rule. You know that Home Rule you were supposed to get in 1973? You don't even have that, my friends. By filling out Home Rule, Congress can get the District of Columbia toward greater equality with the 50 states. Let me illustrate. For example, this past Congress, I introduced 16 bills to expand and round out Home Rule for the district. Here are examples. Legislative autonomy, which would allow local bills, the bills of our council, to take effect immediately when passed by the council. Instead of what happens today, the council passes a bill, it will take often 6 months for that bill to become law. Not because the Congress does anything, but because of this ancient rule that says it's got to lie here in case somebody wants to jump up and overturn D.C. law. The fact is that they long ago found that the way to overturn D.C. law, if they can, is to do it through the appropriation process. So this is a never used, but real headache for the mayor, the city council chair, and members of the council who are here today, whose laws take many months to go into effect, and so they have to put a hold on the laws to make sure they don't just die out before the laws become effective. That's an example that I think we can get through this council, making life much easier, this Congress, making life much easier for the council. Giving the district a local prosecutor. Why should the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia be appointed by the President of the United States? Authorizing the mayor to deploy the National Guard on local matters, such as hurricanes. If there is a hurricane or a snowstorm which has nothing to do with security, the mayor has to come to me. I have to float all the way up to the president to say, can the mayor call out the National Guard? You all could all be underwater by the time I got an answer back. Those are the kinds of things that tell you you are a free and equal state. And we will not wait for statehood to get what we're entitled to. These, and I could name many other home rule changes, still leave Congress with the power to intervene until there is statehood. But it would allow the district, they will seldom try to intervene if we get these home rule matters rounded out. And they would allow the district to proceed on important matters while discouraging attempts to interfere with our local laws, especially on these matters of important concern to the district. So whether on the direct track, which we will proceed forthwith for passage of H.R. 51, or the more gradual process to fill out and obtain full home rule. The residents who live in the nation's capital are determined to be recognized and to be treated as full and equal citizens. You don't have to go zig or zag. You gotta go as many ways as you find open. That is the birthright of our citizens. If we do what we've been doing all these years of Republican control, if we fight hard enough together, the bills we pursue today will inevitably pass, and the American citizens who live in the nation's capital will finally, after 218 years, become full and equal citizens of the United States of America. Thank you. Now, to represent our city who have to live in this unequal status, we want to hear now from Mayor Muriel Bowser. Pleased to call her to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. And let's give a big round of applause to our Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton and congratulate her on achieving the majority. And we know how much and how effective she has been in her entire tenure in delivering for the residents of the District of Columbia. And as you've heard, for most of that time in the minority and for all of that time without a full vote in this House. Congresswoman Norton should be thanked for reclaiming federal land in the District of Columbia, for working hard for us every single day to make sure D.C. residents are employed and recognized, and for moving our city forward. We are also very grateful to her for her superior strategy, I should say strategic mind, and ability to outthink all of her opponents. So please recognize this brilliant woman. We also are grateful that she has spent her time in office forging relationships with allies, with people who don't yet know that they're our allies, and now she is able to deliver on building those relationships and those friendships. So we also congratulate our friend and ally, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. I would like to start by saying, as I think I started last year, I'm Muriel Bowser. I am the duly re-elected mayor of Washington, D.C. I have the sole responsibility of executing the laws of the District of Columbia. I am pleased to be joined by the duly re-elected council chairman for the Council of the District of Columbia. With his colleagues, they have the responsibility of crafting the laws, policies, and improving the budget of the District of Columbia. More than 700,000 residents of Washington, D.C. have elected us to represent them and to execute our laws. And we demand that the Congress stay out of our business. And we know that we can fully achieve that by becoming the 51st state. In our past two budgets, D.C. has invested nearly $2 million in local funds to educate the American public about our statehood efforts. Our team has traveled the country from California to New York to educate Americans about our lack of full democracy. We have started the work of engaging the business community, and shortly members of the business community will also establish an effort to support our 51st statehood efforts. Today, we are seeing these efforts come to fruition. H.R. 51, the statehood bill, thanks to our Congresswoman, has 155 original sponsors, the largest in our movement for statehood. The momentum is high. The 702,000 residents of Washington, D.C. sent a very clear message in November 2016. We demand statehood, and we demand it now. In 2016, we overwhelmingly voted to create a new constitution, the boundaries for the new state of Washington, D.C., and to form a representative government. And we will not stop fighting until we achieve it. We feel confident that in our new democratically led House that we can get our vote on statehood, because this new Congress knows that the lack of representation is not only unacceptable, it's un-American. Unlike any other federal tax-paying American citizen, residents of the district are not represented fully. The United States is the only nation in the world with a representative democratic constitution that denies voting representation in its legislature to the citizens of its capital. The district is a self-sufficient, effective, and responsible government. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. We have balanced 23 budgets. We maintain healthy cash reserves. And even in the face of a shutdown caused by, our economy continues to be resilient. We continue to diversify our economy. And we are in the best shape to deal with the uncertainties we see at the federal government. And to clear up any confusion, let's reiterate this point. We raise our taxes locally and we pay our own way. Not only that, we pay more federal taxes than 22 states and more per capita than all 50. And we receive less back. Hear me well. We receive less back than 23 states. You know what that makes us? A donor state. A donor not yet state. And that's not accounting for the hundreds of millions of dollars that we spend to support the federal government daily and to accommodate commuters from Maryland and Virginia who come here to work each day. When the federal government shuts down, we step up, and we're doing it right now. We don't want to be doing it, but we will do it. We want the federal government to get back open. Not only does it affect trash on the National Mall, visitors' ability to go to the Smithsonian institutions, which we pay for federally, it affects real Americans who don't know when they're going to get their next paycheck. It affects our contractors who will not be repaid for work that they're not being permitted to do. It affects our restaurant workers who are going to work right now at empty restaurants and getting their hours cut because there are no workers to serve. Open the government now. Statehood is not a Democratic or Republican issue. We know that. It's an American issue. The decisions made in this Congress affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans who live all across our nation, obviously, but of course right here in D.C. The ability for us to access health care, to protect ourselves from gun violence, to create and execute the laws and policies that align with the values, our values. We know our values better than any member of this Congress, excluding our Congresswoman. Washingtonians deserve equality. We deserve fairness. And that's what full statehood means. So we stand here today with our Congresswoman, but we also stand ready to do whatever she needs. So when that hearing happens, I know for sure she won't be alone. When that markup happens, I know for sure that we're going to call all the members of the committee and let them know that she needs their support too. And when we have to go to the next level and all the bills that she mentioned, which are so important, not having our laws wait up here means that the council doesn't have to do a lot of gymnastics to get the law in place when we need the law in place. Having the ability to call on the National Guard, it sounds like maybe it's a far-off thing, but I've had to do it. And I may have to do it again. Don't get me started on needing our own local prosecutors. We know when violence impacts our communities. We know what needs to happen. We shouldn't have to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office to make sure they care about our lives as much as we do. These are important steps to getting the ability to take care of ourselves and to make sure that the taxes that we pay get what we deserve as our birthright as Americans. And that's full representation in this Congress. May God bless you in the District of Columbia.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. You've put us off to a flying start. The mayor mentioned the shutdown. I want you to know that in the past, the district has been shut down too, even though we've gotten our own budget passed in time. So every year I put a measure in, that was in last year's budget, that says, in case the federal government is dumb enough to shut down, the District of Columbia will proceed, and it will proceed at next year's rates. So we will not be bothered by their shenanigans, because I can't tell you when the federal government will open. I have already introduced Anita Bond. Since then, I'm very pleased to say that Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie has come in. Please stand. And Ward 5, and my own council member, Charles Allen, has come in. We're glad to have you here. By the time the 115th Congress closed, we had 90% of all the Democrats for D.C. statehood. That shows you the kind of support we have, and we're already on our way to getting that and more, and we have an expanded Congress coming. Very important now to hear from the council chair, who has to bear a lot of the burden that D.C. faces when it doesn't have statehood and doesn't even have full home rule. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you now the chair of our own council, Council Chairman Mendelson.
Thank you, Eleanor. Good morning to everybody. And I again want to acknowledge my colleagues who are here from the council, Anita Bonds, who's at large, Kenyon McDuffie, who's the chair pro tem, and representative from Ward 5, Charles Allen, who's the representative from Ward 6 and chair of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. I also want to acknowledge, although they've already been acknowledged, the three folks who are standing behind me, our shadow senators, Michael Brown and Paul Strauss, and Representative Franklin Garcia. And I want to thank Mayor Bowser, because she really has put a lot of energy behind this issue to press for a statehood for the district. Let me see, we sort of revived what had happened 30 years ago with the Constitution and submitted that to Congress as a measure, and that was really due to a lot of energy that came out of Mayor Bowser and her office. And I, of course, want to thank Eleanor Holmes Norton, who sometimes we call our warrior on the Hill, because that is what she is, particularly when she has to fend off some of the proposals that the public knows about and some that the public doesn't know about that attempt to limit what limited government we have. Why is it that the United States of America is the only democracy on earth where the citizens of the capital city do not have representation in the national legislature? Why is it that the United States of Mexico has been able to grant statehood to its capital city, formerly a federal district, just like the District of Columbia, while our Congress has been completely unwilling to even debate the subject? Our detractors say that the Founding Fathers intended this, intended to diminish the rights of the citizens living in what was, at the time, part of the state of Maryland. But actually, there is nothing in the Federalist Papers or elsewhere indicating that the Founding Fathers intended to take away our citizenship. They overlooked this, just as they overlooked the Bill of Rights, which, as you know, comprises the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Our founding fathers were not perfect. Indeed, there have been 27 amendments to the Constitution, including abolishing slavery, giving the vote to women. Our founding fathers were not perfect. But we don't need to amend the Constitution to remedy our status in the district. We have petitioned, and we are here today to support our congressman in efforts for Congress to grant us statehood, just as Congress has granted statehood to 37 states since the Founding Fathers. We are one of the best run jurisdictions in the country. Mayor Bowser touched on this. Our economy, our government finances are arguably the best in the nation, but we can't even raise the salary of our chief financial officer. We have to do gymnastics to keep our marriage license bureau open. We have to pick up the trash on the mall when the federal government is unable to. We have demonstrated our ability to govern. Don't hold us back. Grant us statehood. Let the 702,000 citizens of the district be equal to all of the citizens of the United States. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman.
Well, I want to thank our mayor and city council chair for coming to support statehood and expanded home rule at a time when it looks like we may be able to get it. If you have any questions for them or any of us, we'll be glad to take them at this time. Yes, sir.
Washington Informer. We've been here on this road for many years. We've never seen this number of African Americans as members of the Congressional Black Caucus. The Democrats are now in the House in control. What is your strategy with this increased political power in the House as you look toward the Senate that still stands in the way for the district to become a full state?
Well, thank you for that question. About the changes in the House itself. This is the most diverse House we've ever had. We have 55 members of the Congressional Black Caucus alone. That's all 55 for statehood. Not to mention the many who've been here for some time who are committed to statehood. Now we have new members. That's why your lobby day in February is going to be important. Some of these new members are from Trump states. So they will have to have statehood for the District of Columbia explained to them. They're Democrats. There's no reason for them to be against it. But why should they be for it? And they need to understand that when they go home, they're not going to be punished for it. They'll be hailed for it. So the lobby day that the coalition of groups, and I see their representatives here today, I'm so grateful to them, will be very important, especially to explaining to these new members what statehood means for the District of. They come here and they can't imagine that there's anybody that doesn't have the same right to go to the House floor. I should mention that when I first came to Congress, remember I had been a law professor, so I wrote a memo saying I can vote in committee, and in many ways the vote in committee is the most important vote you can have. I'm going to chair a subcommittee, for example. But the voting committee is very important because that's where the work gets done. By the time the matter goes to the floor, it goes with the imprimatur of the committee or it doesn't go at all. So I reasoned if I can vote in committee, I should be able to vote on the House floor in the committee of the whole. And the reasoning there was the committee of the whole was not created by the Constitution. It's simply created the same way the committees are created. And I got the right to vote on the House floor. I will be presiding on the House floor any day now. I got that right, had that right for the few years that we had the majority. The Republicans came back to power and took back the district's vote in the committee of the whole. We got some payback to do now. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
With the Associated Press. I'm relatively new to the district and relatively new to this issue, but I've always heard it described in very stark red and blue terms. And, you know, all of the signees, all 155 are Democrats. Is there any hope to make this a bipartisan issue, or is that just...
Our Republicans support, I'm not sure they all support statehood. I do believe many of them support statehood. We should not... It is true that perhaps only 4 or 5% of district residents are Republicans, but they have fought for home rule. They're with us on most issues. I hope that they will be here to lobby with us on in February when the coalition comes forward. We should not assume that because this is a Democratic House, only Democrats in the District of Columbia want to be treated like equal citizens. That is not the case. And so we will be seeking a meeting with the D.C. Republican Party to make sure they are involved in every way in this effort. So thank you for that question. Any other questions for me or the mayor or the council chair?
With regard to
come to the podium.
the costs to the district taxpayers for the shutdown, I've got some numbers from your staff about the current applications for unemployment insurance. Can you talk a little bit about that, how the district is handling that? I know you've authorized some overtime there. Can you just kind of tell us how you're doing that?
So Mark has asked what costs the district is incurring during the shutdown. We issued a statement related to our public works costs. We have added, and we will continue to attempt to deploy clean teams in some areas to deal with litter. And I have authorized our Department of Employment Services to add hours as needed for more unemployment claims that we expect to get. I think I don't have the number in front of me of the increase right now, but we have seen an increase. We know that people will start to miss paychecks in the week ahead.
So, do you have any plans to seek reimbursement for any of these monies, the trash collection?
I will seek reimbursement for all of it.
So, for the overtime at DOES, for the trash collection, additional expenditures for the district?
At the end, which we hope is near, we will evaluate our additional cost and we will seek reimbursement. Yes.
The issue of marriage, I know that was a critical thing that the city picked up because it's still a federal thing to be married in the district. Can you talk about being reimbursed?
Well, let me just be clear that the courts issue marriage licenses, and I have presented and will present to the council a piece of emergency legislation to give the mayor the authority to issue marriage licenses, and I expect the council to vote on that this Tuesday.
Can you tell us how that will work?
We expect that the Office of the Secretary will be the keeper of the licenses in the period of time that the federal government is unable to issue them.
Does that extend to divorces?
No. We're going to be in the business of pulling people together. We're not taking them apart. Well, yes, and that's typically not an urgent issue, whereas somebody being prevented the ability to get their marriage license could stop their nuptials.
And can you just tell us on behalf of the district residents how you feel that D.C. taxpayers, for at least the short term, are picking up filling this gap that the federal government has left behind?
Well, obviously I'm annoyed by it, but I'm also proud that our government runs well enough, is balanced enough, and has the sense of self-determination not to let our city go. Not to let our city become trashed because the federal government is not picking up the trash. A bigger concern, in many ways, is the anxiety that real people feel when they don't get their paycheck. I don't know about you, but I need my paycheck, right? I need it. I don't need it. I can't pay my mortgage. I can't pay for childcare. I can't do the things that I need to do. And I can go without it for a little bit. But I start feeling a real anxiety about how I'm going to live and how I'm going to pay my bills. Now, it is, and we're right after the holidays. We have had extended shutdowns before, never in December, never with people missing January paychecks, where oftentimes that's when they have the most demand from spending during the holiday season.
Congresswoman Norton, a question about her bill. In the past, particularly when the Davis bill was before the Senate, then Senator Mike Pence and the former Speaker Ryan were both supporters of that legislation. Have you reached out to Vice President Pence and asked him for his continued support for the District of Columbia in this respect, given...
I have not, and not only that, he had an opportunity later to support, this was only voting rights, and he took that back. Ryan also took that back. So there is some understanding in the Republican caucus that there's something wrong with paying taxes and having no representation. And Pence, who is now part of the Trump administration, is not going to be an ally for us. So we're going to have to do all of this ourselves. In terms of what the mayor said about funds, the district is not budgeted to pick up trash and to otherwise take up the slack of the federal government. So we will be seeking an appropriation to reimburse the District of Columbia for every cent that the district lays out to keep our city clean and to keep people coming to the district. It is in our interest, but these are all federal facilities. It's in our interest because now that the Smithsonian is closed, we're going to feel it. We do need these tourists, and we don't need the word getting out that if you come to the district, there's going to be a trash heap here. We believe that, again, with Democrats in control, we will be able to get a reimbursement here. I was surprised, too, until I thought about this marriage license matter. And again, here we go with why we need expanded home rule. The courts are Title X courts. And Title X means that these courts are controlled by the federal government. And if the license has to come through the federal government, you see how we are all messed up without statehood? So I'm pleased that this bill will help us get, for God's sake, let people get married as much as we can. Are there any other questions for our mayor and our council chair?
Last time I covered the Hill, I'm back in D.C. You always had a strategic partnership with the White House, be it Bush, Reagan, and Obama and Clinton. What is that relationship now with Trump, now that you have additional leverage on Capitol Hill? Will there be meetings with the Department of Interior or the federal? I mean, they have to come to the table now, don't they? Are you going to seek those meetings?
The Trump administration has blessed us by mostly ignoring the District of Columbia. We are not trying to draw his attention to the city. He does not do well when you give him a new target. He has not been hostile to the District of Columbia. He is ignorant of the District of Columbia. He probably doesn't understand that it's the capital of the United States. I think we're better off keeping it that way. I will seek help from members of his administration when they can be helpful. But as you can see, our fate lies with the Congress of the United States, and we have a big head start now with the House of Representatives in control of Democrats. I do want to say a word about the Senate. We have not been in control of the Senate for most of my time in the Congress, but that is not where my problem has been. For example, the House puts every single year, they will probably have amendments this year. It won't get through this time, and that's the difference. They will have amendments to wipe out all the district's gun laws. They pass those bills. I get them eliminated in the Senate. So it is interesting to note that the Senate is more responsive to the District of Columbia, where we have nothing approaching representation, than the House itself. And my theory about that is that senators represent whole states. So when they think about how to treat the District of Columbia, they recognize that there will be Democrats and Republicans in their states. And we are able to deal with them more easily. So it is this House that is the bad house. We're going to make it the good house. Thanks for all of you who came. Thanks for coming.